Hello and welcome back. This is Johnny Housel from the Lean Guys, and I want to welcome back David Cothran again from CribMaster. And today, David, we're going to talk about some more passive vending. Last time we talked, we talked about vending in general and how and why to use it and a bunch of other things. And I got to say, we've already gotten a tremendous response from people who were really interested in what we were talking about, and I'm very pleased about that. So I'm glad to welcome you back. So with that, let's talk a little bit more about passive vending and some of the different ways that we have in the past utilized vending, and then how we can expand upon that and ways that we know what we've done. We don't know all of the different situations you've been in for vending. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Sure.
So,
awesome. Well, thanks for having me back, John. Appreciate the opportunity.
Sure.
Certainly had a great time last week when we talked about some of the traditional things that have been out in the marketplace. And I would say what most of the customer base knows when you hear the word vending machines, most people think about coils or carousels or maybe lockers that are out there. And I'd say they're out there by the bunches.
Right.
But there is another side of vending that a lot of folks don't think about, and they probably don't even call them vending machines. They may call them more point of use devices. They may call them passive or progressive vending. I think you could put a lot of different terms in front of it, but I would call them different ways to manage inventory outside the traditional box with coils or box with carousels mindset, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you may know from what Mike and I have done in the past that more than half of the point of use vending that we did had nothing to do with an actual vending box. No coils, no anything. I mean, rooms with shelves, with RFID tags, with barcode scanning, all kinds of different opportunities for technology to be used. So, David, what are some of the ways that you see that people are using vending now that have nothing to do with boxes?
Yeah, and I'd like to tell you just a quick story. You kind of reminded me just of some of the things over my career with CribMaster that I've learned. I can't tell you how many times I've done a presentation or had a customer come and visit us at CribMaster and walked in our demo room, and they came in with a very narrowed approach of, I'm here to see that coil machine, or I'm here to see that locker, without really understanding what all's out there. And they left, or we left the meeting with them going, oh my gosh, I can go manage my entire crib, or I can manage all the durable goods I haven't even put in as far as the forefront of my thinking process, just by getting educated by what else is out there. So some examples of that, simply are, you think about the RFID side of the world. I still think RFID is probably still new to some, but it's not nearly as new as what it was about 8 or 9 years ago,
Right.
And we kind of chuckle at CribMaster because our first patented RFID device was back in 2004. Now, go back that far, right? I mean, that's
right.
So although we sell and we tout RFID as a new technology, I mean, we patented it in 2004. So how new is it? I think it's still got a huge runway of opportunity for education and growth as far as technology. The technology from 2004 to 2020 is vastly different. It's
Sure.
improved dramatically, but how it's used in our specific space drastically changes how people view vending or point of use device, or even inventory management. Most things have someone usually using a piece of software or logging stuff onto a spreadsheet or writing stuff down. When you can automate that by putting a tag on a product and pushing them through a gateway or doorway, and who has it, how much they took, when they took it, what they took it for, that's a pretty powerful statement you're making.
Yeah, and a lot of our listeners are going to listen to this discussion, and they're going to say, "Yeah, okay, we get it. The RFID tag is going to trigger a replenishment signal." But most of the RFID tagging that we did for either checking something in or checking something out or tracking where something is with last place detected antennas had nothing to do with replenishment, but had everything to do with things like foreign object detection or keeping track of a work package through a shipyard that the paper travels more than 2 miles in its life cycle, and you need to know where it is all the time. Taking things like objects off from a submarine that are just in the way of the work that actually has to be done, and that piece of equipment needs to go back on the submarine at some point. And so you just put an RFID tag on it, put it away someplace, and the antenna tells you, hey, this is where it was last seen, so you no longer lose things. So those RFID tags become very helpful and huge savings. And you know what? I'm going to pick on one in particular, let you run with it. Let's just talk about foreign object detection and how that's used in the aerospace industry.
Yeah, certainly. So I think you're right on the money there. With the RFID side does bring a sense of accountability, but what it really brings is visibility. And I think the visibility is what most customers really need. In the FOD environment, they need to know that that torque wrench is checked out to a tail number or plane 1, 2, 3, 4. They need to know it was checked out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 4 o'clock, if it's not made it back, someone needs to know they need to go find that or grab that to bring it back without manually going and searching for that. And if you could put up readers up to search for that and actually help you identify where it's potentially at, but look at the time you save just from issue to recovery, back to potentially even calibration to back to issue points again. So there's a ton of cost savings in all those measures.
We were working with a particular aerospace company where they had all their kits, and their kits had on embedded in them the materials that were going to be consumed by their process for actually building the engine or the landing gear or whatever it was they were making. But it also had tags on all the things that had to be accounted for when they left. Because you don't want a socket wrench socket rattling around in an aircraft engine once you leave. And so the kit had to go through a series of antennas to get to the work site, and everything was accounted for on the way in, and then on the way out, everything that was supposed to be consumed needed to be missing, and all the things that were supposed to be accounted for needed to be seen by the RFID antenna. And boy, I'll tell you what, that system worked out so well because not only did it give the accountability of where do I go find it, but now the workers really understood that I'm getting checked every single day. I might as well make sure that my kit is complete as I'm leaving the plane or the engine room or whatever is on the work site, and see that I have everything so that I don't get that next phone call, which is, hey, your kit was incomplete. Now we got to go find it.
That's right.
Yeah, so huge savings.
Yeah, and also what you breed too is confidence, right? And when you have your workforce that believes in the process and can trust the process, then the process then takes over. And when they understand that someone knows that the kit's been issued to them, they know that they're accountable for the items inside of the kit, and if they don't make them back, there's questions to be answered for that as well. Not a week or 2 months later.
That's right.
Usually within seconds or hours of the time of return. And I think those are powerful statements to say when you think about recovery. If you have an accident, people make mistakes and things happen, but when you have that, you should be graded on how fast you can recover from it. That's cost savings. And I think
huge savings. And why? Otherwise, you could be recalling an entire engine that has already been installed, is already 3 or 4 days into production of into the rest of the assembly, and what are you going to do? Tear everything apart? You don't want to, but you would have to. So the savings are just enormous to have that visibility so quick and so immediate.
It's very true. And we're talking about some things now with kitting and those types of things, but there are other options too. When you think about FOD or aerospace, and even in the nuclear side with FME and those types of dialogues. You think about tool control and understanding that I have the right tool at the right place at the right time with the right user. Those are really important feature sets that you can have. Now, point of use. In our world, we've always went back, and I know my gray hair ages me a little bit, but I've always went back and had to get the tool from the tool crib, and I had to go use the tool. I had to bring it back to the tool crib, and the amount of time I spent, just issuing and returning tools on a daily basis versus, wrenching on tools is drastic. When I could put those tools at the point of use and make them an automated process with accountability using RFID type of application, is a pretty powerful cost savings there.
Yeah, and I know that another day we're going to talk about the software in more detail, but this really feeds into another topic that Mike and I were hitting upon in between calls with you, and that was the when you're looking not just at the immediate reports, but even some of the trending reports that you get. We were noticing things like, why is one guy continually going to the crib and getting a new pair of shears twice a day?
Yeah.
And then only to find out that, well, he does that because he doesn't want to clean the shears and he's cutting through something that has a lot of adhesive on it. And so twice a day, he's getting irritated that, his shear's no longer cutting the way it needs to. And instead of cleaning that, he's going out and getting another whole brand new pair, which the shipyard was happy to provide because it's an important tool and it's the right tool for the job. But it gave them a chance to say, wait a minute, we need to find out why this guy's using so many more than everybody else.
Yeah.
And then they were able to build a cleaning process, kind of a return and clean and put back into stock process to alleviate the cost of always buying new shears.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a beautiful thing about data. I know we don't want to get too far in the weeds with software here, but as you were saying, it just reminds me of some of the dialogues we've had with customers about, a lot of customers, when we think about inventory management, we think about the crib, the main storage location. That's usually where our conversations start. Although these days with vending, people want to push it out there to the floor very quickly. But a lot of times we ask the question, what are you trying to manage? What is it? What do you want out there? And you don't always get that answer because they don't really know. They don't have the visibility to really make that decision to say, I need these items at these places. That report you're just talking about is a trip to the cribs report, and it shows how many times I've been to the crib or my department's been to the crib or whoever, however you want to claim that. And not only how many times have I been, but what did I get? Now that tells you really data to say, what should you have and where should you have it at? So you slow down those trips to the cribs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And here's the real root of the matter. As managers, we want to make sure that our people are using the right tool for the job, not the second best tool, not the third best tool, and definitely not the fourth best tool.
Yeah.
Right? We want the right tool for the job. And if that report tells us that people are going there to the crib to pick up the right tool, one, we want to make sure we have the right tool so we don't run out, and we're going to make sure that we do. The second part of that is that second question: why are we consuming so many of these, and what can we do about it? So now we have manager in our names. Now we have a chance to manage something. We're actually going to manage making sure we have the right tool and making sure that tool has a way of being replenished in a way that doesn't cost us a fortune.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah. Even the technology back to the device itself, has gotten better as far as efficiency gain. In the old school days, you had a cabinet out on the floor and had tools in it, and you may have used a chit system or
that's right.
Some level of checkout method, whether you put your fingerprint or something in there. But today with RFID, when you take the tool out, you don't have to go and inspect the drawer. And our mental aptitude is I got to go open the drawer and I got to go through and see which tools are missing. Our solutions now have the power and the brains to tell you that, hey, on the screen right there, even a light bar on the top of it, if there's something missing out of that cabinet, it has a red light on it. Anybody on the floor is now accountable to make sure that light turns green. That's no longer a manager or a leader's responsibility. That's everybody's responsibility in the environment, right? So
that's right.
Red, and I'm the one that's causing it to be red. I go return my tool. We all go home. If it stays red, then you don't even have to pull report anymore. You can go hit one button on the screen. It tells you what's out, the serial number, who it was checked out to, any information you need.
Mhm.
That's speed. And when you can input speed in just because you introduced the technology at the transaction point, that's a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah, that's really something else, and we've seen that in action in several locations, and it's really been beneficial all around, no doubt about it. All right, so we've talked about the RFID a little bit as far as one of the vending options. Um, what about just small parts that, some people like to call them floor sweeps, or just you got to have them, nuts, bolts, washers.
Yeah.
That sometimes they're wire nuts for electrical and different sizes and all those things. So usually we use the weigh stations and other kinds of devices that help us not have to ever count what's there. Tell us a little more about that technology.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of worked a little backwards. We got into managing consumable items in a passive environment,
Hmm.
similar to the RFID environment, which basically means that, hey, I trust you enough to give you access to the materials, right? If I trust you to give you access, then you do the right thing. But as you go in and you badge in or authenticate, this is in a weigh station environment. The items removed based on the weight of those items, we'll figure out what you've taken and we'll post those transactions. That's a really popular way to manage consumable items today. But
Hmm.
we've always left out those bench stock, floor sweep, those nuts, bolts, maybe lower hanging items that just don't justify the cost of putting them inside of a locked, truly authentication cabinet.
Yeah, sure.
So we've introduced some new solutions lately. We have a new solution called FlexSense. And think of this as being an open bin format, right? And
Hmm.
the worst thing is you've got bins on the floor that you've got to have it in order to operate for your indirect material management. But you're not as concerned of someone taking an extra one here or there. It's not truly a FOD environment or FME zone.
Right.
You're just more worried about having the product that your people need in order to go make the product that they're doing their job for, right? So
Sure.
the challenge we've always had is you've had to have runners out there counting bins, and somebody's counting something, right? And
Yeah,
then
an AB bin system or some other thing that someone's got to run around and say, okay, I get this many empties. Let's
yes,
go around and refill them.
yeah. I mean, how
Right.
many plants have you been in your life and you've seen a golf cart pulling trailers behind it, and all they're doing is driving around in circles filling bins all day?
That's right.
Um, so we've gotten now to where we've kind of got smart bins. So think about a bin sitting on top of a sensor. The sensor's a live sensor; it's always active. And you think about a bin holding 100 widgets in the bin, and as this bin gets depleted, as employees on the line or in the environment are taking things out of that bin, as it gets depleted and it gets down to say 50, right around 50 items in the bin, the system's smart enough to realize it's sitting on top of a sensor, and now it sends back notification to the crib or to the supplier, to the runner, or whoever it is that's responsible for replenishment. But now it allows them ample time to get there and replenish the bin without having to go count it first, if that makes
That's
sense.
right. Yeah.
So think about the trip savings. Just the trip savings alone, is that single savings a trip of the count mechanism is pretty substantial. Um, and all that is using a smart bin. That's not really putting out big vending machines. That's not locking you up with a key that you got to have some special security codes. That's just really saying, hey, let's automate your reorder points
That's
so that
right.
you make sure you don't run out and you always have what you need in order to operate.
Yeah, and it could be as simple as lighting up some lamps to say, okay, you've got some, most everything is green, you got a couple of yellows and you got a few reds. And the
Yeah.
reds just mean that, probably within a shift or two, you're running out. So be sparing with these. If you
Yeah.
don't really need them, don't take them. But if you do need them, of course, take them because it's your job. But replenishment needs to be on its way.
John, you make a great point, because it's really two sides of that. You have an operator side, the person who's grabbing materials,
Hmm.
who really doesn't understand if it's been reordered. Is someone coming out to replenish? They're not
Right.
sure. All they know is they need 10 more. But if you give them, and we have the ability to give them a visual indicator on the front. But if visually, if I know that the bin light is yellow, then I know it's been ordered. I can proceed. I can take what I need. But if it's red, that means I'm at a critical level. I may not want to take the last one because it may really shut us down. So not from an operator perspective, right? But the
Sure.
other side of it too is from the admin or the replenishment side of it. They have their module as well. And again, without getting too far into software, it gives you the same visual indicators. Hey, that tells them where they need to go right now. I got
That's
some red
right.
ones lit up. I better make corrective action right now. If I don't do it now, I'm in jeopardy of shutting a line down or causing bigger problems within the operation.
Yeah, that's right. And who wants to shut a line down for something as simple as a washer or a quarter head, I mean, a quarter 20 screw or something ridiculous like that? And
Right.
you know what? I have seen a line shut down for not having a shrink wrap tube,
Yeah, it's true.
for the right wire.
It's true.
As ridiculous as that sounds, it's still critical, you know? So hey, that I like how we've transitioned from the RFID now into more of the passive. I've got several clients that have on their floor right now. One comes to mind that makes a lot of electric motors, and they've got those parts bins everywhere throughout their entire plant. And they do have the AB boxes where there's always a box that someone's taking from, always a box that's right behind it. That's the next full one. And there are runners all the time trying to make sure that those things are staying full. And I'm certain that they would see the value of just having a signal come to them to say, hey, these are the ones that are running low, and get on these. That'd be a much more cost-effective system.
There's
Yeah,
probably some savings too from just the square footage. Obviously every square inch is money to a plant like that, right? So if you think about how much space they're taking up by storing those items now for the sake of not running out, right? If you're going to
right.
cut that space down and give them automation and time to react, you've probably got more space for them to add more product to be built in too over a general facility. So just food for thought there.
Sure. Um, hey, I have a hypothetical for you.
Okay.
So I know that you have kind of the Vidmar bins where you're using vertical space instead of just the space that's in front of you. But let's say, for instance, there's a company that can't really be constrained inside a shelf on a Vidmar, and let's call them rolls of carpet or rolls of paper or rolls of something that's big, but still on a vertical carousel. Is there ways of taking the software and barcodes and those kinds of things and integrate them into a system that already exists that way, so they have a better handle on their inventory?
Certainly, there's certainly a number of ways we can do that. We may have the ability to actually drive the vertical lift if it's truly a mechanically driven, or
Hmm,
say electronically driven vertical lift. There's some
interesting.
brands out there. Venmar's got one, but there's a couple other brands out there. We may have the ability to put our software onto that device and actually drive it from our actual software. That way it communicates back into all the other CribMaster solutions you may have. You may have vending, you may have point of use device, you may have a vertical lift. All of it goes back to the same nucleus of a core software structure. You also may be able to put something in front of that vertical lift. So you can think about tagging those rolls with RFID tags, right? So
Sure.
although you know what's in there, but once it leaves, you may be able to watch that item move throughout the facility because it's moving through our antenna points, or maybe it's moved through a
Right.
doorway that we capture who it is and which roll they've gotten. Maybe they thought they were supposed to get one, and maybe they grabbed two. And for whatever reason, we saw both of them leave. At least we're accountable and can adjust replenishment points and make notifications aware from that point, all by putting something in front of that vertical lift from that point of view.
Let me add a twist to this.
Sure.
What if these rolls are things that need to be checked out, some's used, and then the remainder is brought back in? Could we add a scale or some sort of sensor for weight? So we weigh it on the way out, we weigh it on the way back in, and keep track of how much we have on hand?
Potentially, we probably have to look at that depending on who's doing those types of transactions. But I would say potentially, especially on the return, but you might have to have some admin rights on doing some of those features, but certainly have the way to adjust inventory back and forth. That's certainly capable to do, and then we'd have to figure out the RFID tagging mechanism. Do we reassign tags? Do we create new tags? How do you change the characters of that tag of assignment point of view? But yes, certainly all feasible things to do within the software and hardware elements.
All right. Sorry to throw that curveball at you like that without any pre-warning. I do appreciate your candor and coming or joining in with the fun with me on that.
You sound like a normal customer.
Yeah. Well, I actually haven't been a customer, but I've talked to an awful lot of customers. So I do agree that yes, I did sound like a customer just then. So are there any other kinds of passive vending that you want to talk about now that other than the RFID and not just the weigh stations, but how we do that out in the open bins and other things? Are there other issues that you want to bring to the table?
No, I'd say that covers probably the lion's share of the passive side, but there are many other ways of managing inventory. There's kiosk out there, not scales, not RFID, but they're kiosks. So, you know, commonly asked in the industry, great, I've had my list of 200 items that were really important for the business, and we were able to put 130 of those into a solution that makes really good sense, really good ROI, but the other 70 items are still sitting over there in a corner, unmanaged,
right?
No attention paid to them, and guess what? They cost us quite a bit of money when we can't find them or we need them, and I don't have enough of them for the job. So there's kiosks that help with that I think that are out there. Think about the mobile solutions that are out there. When you think about, you know, mobile apps on your phone, there's lots of different ways to manage inventory. And I think the minute that we start painting ourselves collectively into a box, we've really limited ourselves what we can really manage.
Yeah, that's right. And so it's time to get out of the box on a lot of these different products for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we do understand that the box has its place and we use the box an awful lot and we're happy to use the box, but there's a lot of things that don't fit in the box that we still need to manage. So that's wonderful. Hey, David, thank you very much for joining me again today. I think we had an excellent discussion today, and looking forward to our next one. And for those of you who were wondering, because I think I did promise on the last one that Mustang Mike would be joining us. Right as we were getting on this call today, lightning struck right next to his house and took out his internet. So during this call, in fact, he's been texting me, letting me know he and his family and everything is okay. So that's all good. But I'm sure we'll have more discussions that include Mike as we go on. And also, if you really like what it is that we're talking about, please subscribe to the Lean Guys and make sure you hit the like button below. All right, thanks, David, and looking forward to our next discussion.
Thanks, John. Take care.
Take care.